working on my walk-in humidor, and I want to make some shelves for bundles of cigars. So what I did was I bought a 1x8 cedar board from Menards. I also picked up some 1x2s. And I'll show you upstairs in a little bit what I did with the shelving. Basically, I cut the shelves to length. I ripped these 1x2s down and set this on the edge. That way the boxes of cigars can sit in there and they won't slide off the front. As far as the actual bundles go, what I did was I'm making this full length, almost full length. I have a 1x8, and then I put these with a 5-inch spacing between these, and these are 4 inches tall. And I have 4 clamps. I am not gluing it, I'm just clamping it in. Clamp it in at a right angle, pre-drill your holes on all 4, and then switch to a larger bit that's the same width as the head of the screw. Hit it with that, that way when you countersink it, it does not split the wood. And then go ahead and screw it in. I did that to everything on the bottom side, well, the top side actually, and then I flipped it over, and now I'm doing those on the other side. Once I get to this end, then I need to make some more shelf brackets. I'm making the shelf brackets out of this stuff right here, because I think they're going to look a lot better in cedar than they would in metal. And I'll show you what those look like upstairs when I put this thing in. I think this is going to look pretty neat. It's going to sit up there, and you'll be able to hold quite a few bundles of cigars. So I'll add. Okay, in order to make my shelf brackets, I take a 1x8 piece of cedar and I cut it the same width as it already is going the other direction, and this is 13/16. So I set my table saw at 13/16 and run them through. But first, before I do that, I want my risers, my verticals for the back of the shelf bracket to be 9 inches, and I want this one sticking out here to be 7. So I take my 1x8 over to my miter saw. I cut a piece off that's 9 inches, and I cut a piece off that's 7 inches. I then take that piece of wood, which would, for example, look like this. If this was the 7-inch one, then I run these through the table saw and make these. These are my 9-inch ones for my verticals, and these are the 7-inch ones that are perpendicular to the wall for the top of the shelf bracket. I then have some of these clamps, put them 90 degrees, I have the short one on top, long one on the bottom, and I pre-drill these with one screw right through there. I then use this bigger bit because it is the same width as the head, a little bit bigger than the head of the screw, and then I countersink those, drill those out so that it won't split, especially when you're this close to the end of a piece of wood. It can easily split. I then put my Torx head tip in. I'm using these screws. They're approximately they're a good length. They're not too long, not too short, and I screw these into there. Now once I get that done, then I measure in 1 inch from here on all of them so they're the same. I cut this at a 45. Take it over to the miter saw, set the miter saw at 45, and then I cut it at a 45. Hold that on that line, and then that will determine where this is on the back side. I then mark that with a pencil, and I go cut it. I then hold it in there and screw in both sides, and then I have a shelf bracket. I'll make a little bit more video on this later once I get these screwed together and once I get my 45s cut. Okay, hopefully you can see this. This is my 7-inch one, this is the 9-inch one. It is drilled. I have this mark here that's marked at 1 inch. I've cut these at 45. So what you do is hold this flush with this right at your 1 inch mark and set on a 45, just like that, and you mark down there on that one. we then cut this, put this in, drill it, and screw it together. So I will go ahead and do these, and I will add more to this later. Okay, shelf bracket is done. I have this cut. Right there's my 1-inch mark. Put that right on the 1-inch mark. Even it up on both sides. Pull really hard. Drill that. Keep holding it because you do not want it to move. So now we need to put the big one in so that we can countersink it so it can sit flat against the wall. That out. Put a tip in. These screws are 1.25 inches. That way they don't come out the other side, but they do go into this piece of wood. Now when you do this, go slow and pull really hard with your hand. Countersink it. Now do other side. Pull really hard with your hand, keep it tight. And now, take this off. And now I have a shelf bracket that can go against the wall. And then a board can sit on there like that. The other thing I will have to do is drill a hole here and have it countersunk. And then eventually I will screw the shelves to it once I get them adjusted. But that's how I'm making my cedar shelf brackets. I think they're a lot better looking than the metal ones, and they'll look good in the walk-in humidor. Okay, I mark everything and measure everything. I'm going 1 inch from the bottom of the shelf bracket. I measure it and put a little mark. And then I'm going in 2 inches on this side. Once I get that marked, I need to pre-drill these. Make sure your bit is just about the size of the screw without the threads. And all you have to do is pre-drill these. And these can go straight in because you can get a drill for them. But these here have to go in at an angle because you can't get your drill in here for when you attach it to the wall. So you drill them at an angle. Once you put them in and get the shelf on and everything, you can't even really tell that they're at an angle. Nobody will notice it. So now they're all pre-drilled. I then switch to a bigger bit so that I can countersink for the size of the head of the screw. But if you don't do that, when you countersink these screws, it will split this wood. They're real small diameter. Okay, I am just about ready to put my bundle rack shelf up. Now these, I'm not going to use 1.25 for going into the wall. I want to use these bigger ones. That way they go into the wall far enough to hold everything. These others would be too short. So I need my Torx head. Torx heads are better than Phillips. They never slip. Basically a Torx head is a star as opposed to a Phillips. So now all we have to do is start these until you can just feel it starting to poke out on the other side with your finger. That way they're easier to put on the wall because you're going to be holding the tape measure, you're going to be holding the level to make sure everything is just right, and it just starts coming through the other side. And then you stop. So you get the idea. I will add more to this later. Okay, I have my shelves in and I got my bundle shelf done that I was working on. This is it here. I left 5 inches between, which is plenty, but as you can see, that leaves room for bundles of cigars. And I also left a gap back here so that there's room for humidity to air movement through there so that we have good circulation. I think it looks really good. The other thing I'm going to do is I will have shelves, come on, focus. I'm going to have shelves on the end here that'll be 1x10s instead of 1x8s, and that will make room for wider boxes. These joints will go straight into that and it'll come right around the corner. And there'll be 3 on this side, and there will also be 3 on this end over here. 1, 2, and 3. That'll fill in the end. And the other thing I will be doing is putting cedar on the floor. Once I get the cedar on the floor, I need to replace my door with a glass door so you can see in the humidor, and then I'll have to get my humidification system that will probably sit down there on the floor, and I need to get a temperature humidity gauge that I'll either put on the wall or on a shelf or something like that. So I think that it looks really good. It's come along really nice. If you have any comments or likes, let me know.